Close for the Season, Chapter 12. After a half an hour of steady uphill climbing, made even more fun by cars and trucks racing past just inches from my handlebars, Arthur turned off the highway. Pretty soon, we were making our way up an even steeper hill on a narrow dirt road that wound along the edge of a sharp drop-off. Not the sort of place to encounter a large vehicle. Nowhere to go but off the road and down a hill into a rocky-strewn gully. Certain death. Finally, Arthur rounded a curve and came to a stop, skidding on loose gravel and dirt. The Phelps's house is up the hill on the left. The mobile home where Violet lives is behind it. He wiped his sweaty face with his arm. The Jarmans live on the other side of the road. They've got a bunch of mean dogs who hate bikes. While I tried to convince myself that I wasn't scared of the Jarmans or their dogs, Arthur dumped his old Raleigh in a thicket of honeysuckle and wild grapevine. Sure, I was making a big mistake. I laid my bike beside his. Keeping a screen of underbrush between ourselves and the road, we sneaked toward the houses. I had a feeling those dogs could smell us 10 miles away, even if something like the old Berlin Wall separated us from them. Voila! La Mansion Phelps. Arthur pointed to an old farmhouse weathered to gray. Its roof was patched with sheets of plywood, and a ply of cinder block propped up one corner of the front porch. A vine, no doubt a kazoo, covered most of the porch roof and hung from the eaves. Except for the satellite dish attached to a tree, some people might have described the place as picturesque in a ramshackle, run-down way. But not if they'd known anything about the inhabitants. Its chrome shining, Silas's motorcycle leaned against the porch. My stomach plummeted. He must be home. That was very, very bad. Behind the house was a beaten-up old mobile home. From somewhere inside, a radio blasted 70s hard rock music, but no one was in sight. Look over there, Arthur pointed across the road. La Mansion Jarman. The Jarman's house was smaller and made of stone, but it was just as neglected. 2 small cement lions sat on the porch, gazing down the overgrown lawn. At least a dozen skinny cats slept on the sagging roof of a rusted-out geoprism, but the dogs were nowhere to be seen. Crudely lettered signs nailed to trees warned strangers away. "Beware vicious attack dogs," one said. "No trespassing," said another. And scariest of all, "Have gun, will shoot." The hot summer beat down on my bike helmet. Sweat ran down my spine. My t-shirt stuck to my skin. I felt dizzy from the heat and the endless buzzing of cicadas. I wanted to go home before the dogs attacked, or a Jarman came out of the door and shot us with his gun. But before I had a chance to say, "Let's go," I saw Silas step out of the mobile home. Danny was right behind him. From our hiding place, we watched Silas straddle his motorcycle. "Give me a ride, Dad," Danny begged. "You promised." His voice was nasal, had a nasal edge, almost a whine, that I hadn't noticed when I had met him at the Toot and Tote. "Some other time, maybe tomorrow." "You said that yesterday," Danny said, definitely whining this time, "and the day before." His dad shrugged, strapping on his helmet, and he roared down the driveway with the throttle wide open. Danny watched him leave, his face creased with disappointment. When Silas was out of sight, but not out of hearing, Danny stood in the driveway, his head down, his shoulders drooping, kicking stones. I could have almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But not quite. A skinny little girl appeared in the mobile home's doorway. Maybe 5, maybe 6. She wore a faded t-shirt and baggy shorts, and her hair was the color of texture of dental floss. "Is Daddy gone? What do you think?" Daddy muttered a few cuss words and went into the mobile home with the girl. The screen door slammed behind them like a gunshot. "That was May," Arthur whispered. "Danny's little sister." Poor kid. Just as I was about to suggest leaving, Billy's pickup rumbled into sight. Johnny was with him. In the back were boxes of stuff from the attic, that was bulging with Mrs. Donaldson's stuff. Ducking behind a tree, we watched Billy pull into the driveway. He and Johnny got out and began unloading the boxes. Dumping the contents on the ground, they started pawing through the clothing, books, and newspapers. "You really think you're going to find any money?" Johnny asked. "She had it hid all over that house. Ask anybody." "Oh, that's just a rumor, Billy. I was in and out of there a lot doing yard work and stuff, and I kept my eyes peeled. I can tell you. But I really never saw an extra dollar bill. She could barely afford to pay me for cutting the grass." "Then why do you think somebody killed her?" Johnny shrugged. "Money was probably what he was after, and I doubt he got any. Maybe she hid it in the magic forest." Billy kicked a thick book across the yard. "Did you ever think of that?" Johnny grimaced and wiped his sweaty face with his t-shirt. "If she hid it in that jungle, nobody will ever find it. A couple of $1,000,000 is worth looking for, ain't it?" Johnny shrugged. "That's just a rumor. Nobody knows for sure how much was missing." Danny chose that moment to cross the road. "What are you guys doing with that old stuff?" "Nothing." Billy kicked a box over and scowled at the books and records and photo albums that tumbled out. "Just junk." Signaling to Johnny, he headed for the pickup. "Can I come with you?" Danny asked. Neither Billy nor Johnny answered. Leaving Mrs. Donaldson's stuff in the yard, they got into the truck and drove away. Left behind again, Danny cussed all the swear words I'd ever known, and a few that I hadn't. Then he pulled a low slug bike out of the weeds and rode off, still cussing. I pitied anyone smaller than him who looked at him the wrong way. "Come on," I said. "Let's get out of here before someone else comes along." Just as we reached the place we had hidden our bikes, the dogs crawled out from underneath the geo, 3 of them, long and lean and mean. Part wolf, from the look of them. Maybe all wolf. Barking like hellhounds, they came after us, fast. Arthur and I threw ourselves on our bike and started pedaling faster than I thought possible. The dogs were right behind us, so close I swear I could feel their hot breath on my bare legs. Just as I thought they had us, we crested the hill and started down. Bumping over ruts and skidding on loose gravel, we stayed on our bikes as if we were glued to the seats. From the bottom of the hill, we could hear the dogs barking, but they seemed to have lost interest in chasing us. Maybe they just wanted to scare us away. Well, I can tell you that they succeeded. My heart was beating so hard, I was afraid it would burst. Those dogs were bigger than the Hound of Bakersfield and twice as vicious. I frowned at Arthur. "I'm never coming to this place again." He pushed his sweaty black hair from his forehead, leaving it standing straight up. As James Bond once said, never say never. "Never, never, 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 never," I retorted. When we finally got home, my legs ached. In fact, I almost fell down when I got off my bike. I was that sore. But before I had a chance to go inside and take a nap in the bathtub, Mrs. Jenkins beckoned us to come to her back door. "Somebody's here to see you, boys," she called. Violet was sitting at the kitchen table, looking as weary as I felt. The plastic gingerbread men were scattered across the table. Arthur grabbed a couple of old cans of soda from the refrigerator and handed one to me. "I don't know whether to drink it," he said, "or pour it over my head." "I say drink it." I flopped down at the table, tipped the can back, and gulped it down so fast that I almost choked. "Violet showed me a note from her mother," Mrs. Jenkins said. "We've been sitting here trying to figure out what game she meant." Across the table from me, Violet toyed with the green gingerbread men. "Remember the map of the magic forest they used to give you when you bought a ticket?" she asked. He nodded. "There were little pictures of all the attractions, Willie the Castle. If I looked at one," Violet said, "maybe I'd remember the finding game. I bet the library has plenty of them in the local history file. Want me to go get you one?" Arthur said. "I'd go myself, but I work the 9 to 6 shift tomorrow, the same hours that the library's open." She pushed her chair back and gathered up her things. "I have to go home and fix dinner for the kids." At the door, Mrs. Jenkins gave her a hug. "You be careful, honey. Being divorced isn't enough to keep Silas away. Any trouble, you call me. Come over if you like. Bring the kids. We've got an extra bedroom." Arthur raised his eyebrows in mock horror and ran a finger across his throat. Neither of us wanted Danny Phelps staying at Arthur's house. The next morning, Arthur and I rode our bikes to the library. He headed straight to the row of gray filing cabinets against the rear wall. Dropping to his knees, he opened a bottom label a bottom drawer labeled Local History, L through N. Flipping through the folders, he pulled out one and waved to me. Voila! He cried. The Magic Forest! We sprawled out on the floor and started going through the folder. Stuck in with old photographs and newspaper clippings was a map of the Magic Forest, showing a wide path looping around Willie the Whale's pond, smaller paths branching off, leading to kiddie rides and other attractions. The Old Woman's Shoe, Peter Pumpkin's Shell, Cinderella's Coach, Mother Hubbard's Cupboard, the Witch's Hut. Uh-oh, I said. It's stamped reference only. So? Well, so that means it can't be checked out. Who said anything about checking it out? We can make a photocopy. Well, do you have any money? No, but you must have some. I turned my pockets out to show him that they were empty. Arthur swore a little swear. Then, taking a quick look around, he stuffed the map into his pocket. Arthur! Shh! We need this more than anybody else that I can think of. And with that, we headed to the door, pausing on his way out to wave to Mrs. Bailey in the children's room. We'll bring it back, he whispered to me, after Violet figures out where her mother hid the briefcase. First trespassing, now stealing. No, not stealing. Informally borrowing. What would Arthur think of next? Although I was positive an alarm would go off, no one stopped us from sauntering out into the steamy July heat. Where to now? I asked wearily. Walmart, he said. Where else? Grabbing our bikes, we sped away, unnoticed, uncaught, criminals in the making. We might as well have been part of the Jarman Phelps extended family.